The game should never have been in the balance, but it was. Argentina had battered Brazil, created chance after chance, had shot after shot. Yet it was only with 3 minutes to go that Umberto Maschio, the tough inside right from Racing, finally made it 2-0. In the wave of relief that followed, the Independiente winger Osvaldo Cruz added a third, and Argentina, with a game to spare, were South American champions for 1957, their 11th title. As the players celebrated on the pitch after the final whistle in the Estadio Nacional in Lima, a microphone was handed to the River Plate defender, Federico Vairo, so he could address the crowd. Although a leader, he was a player whose gentle face suggested concern most of the time, and, on this occasion, his emotions overwhelmed him. He tried to compose himself, gripped the microphone more firmly, but when he began to speak, his voice was tremulous. "It's," he said uncertainly, "it's all thanks to these caras sucias, to these 5 sinvergüenzas." His voice trailed away, and he handed the microphone back to the official who'd thrust it at him. He'd managed only one sentence, but in it, he both gave that team the name by which history would know them and encapsulated the spirit of Argentinian football to that point. Nobody had any doubt to whom Vairo was referring. The forward line of Omar Areste Corbata, Umberto Maschio, Antonio Angelijo, Omar Sivori, and Osvaldo Cruz had been devastating throughout the tournament, playing skillful, fluent football that resonated with a sense of enjoyment. What better name for the 5 players who had inspired Argentina to the Campeonato Sudamericano than Los Angeles con caras sucias, the angels with dirty faces, a nod to the 1938 film starring Jimmy Cagney and Humphrey Bogart, and a recognition both of the impudence of their style and the carefree way in which they played, which extended to a less than rigorous attitude to training. "Sivori drove the coach Guillermo Stabile mad," said the left half Angel Pocho Schandlein. "If the bus left at 8 for training, Sivori was always missing, and he'd show up at 10 in a taxi. Sivori liked to sleep." In time, the caras sucias, as the nickname was abbreviated, came to stand for the great lost past of the Argentinian game, a golden age in which skill and cheek and fun held sway, before the age of responsibility and negativity. The image may have been romanticized, but the sense of loss when it was gone was real enough, and, in that nostalgia for an illusory past when the world was still being made and idealism had not been subjugated by cynicism, is written the whole psychodrama of Argentinian football, perhaps of Argentina itself. In 1535, Don Pedro de Mendoza set off across the Atlantic from Sanlúcar de Barrameda, Cadiz, with 13 ships and 2,000 men, having been named governor of New Andalusia by Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor and King of Spain. Mendoza, and those at the imperial court who granted him half the treasure of any local chief conquered and 9/10 of any ransom received, dreamed of a land of immense wealth. What he found was a vast prairie, populated by hostile tribes, whose culture seemed primitive when set against the sophisticated and wealthy empires of Mexico and Peru. The whole expedition was a fiasco. Mendoza's fleet was scattered by a storm off Brazil, then his lieutenant, Juan de Osorio, was assassinated. Some say Mendoza ordered the murder because he suspected him of disloyalty. Although Mendoza sailed up the Rio de la Plata and, in 1536, founded Buenos Aires on an inlet known as the Riachuela, any sense of accomplishment was short-lived. Mendoza was confined to bed for long periods by syphilis, while early cooperation with the local Guerandies turned to rancor. The 3-foot adobe wall that surrounded the settlement was washed away every time it rained, and, without the help of the local people, the early settlers struggled to find food and were reduced to eating rats, snakes, and their own boots, before finally resorting to cannibalism. As the population dwindled, killed by the indigenous people, illness or starvation, Mendoza decided to return to Spain to seek assistance from the court. He died on the voyage back across the Atlantic.